We're live.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode with us today. And as usual, we are here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Welcome to WellDoctors.us Live. I'm Dr. Andrea Le, and along with me is Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, your guide through the world of personal finance. Whether you are a seasoned investor or just starting out your financial journey, this show is designed to empower you with practical tips and actionable strategies. So, Dr. Stephanie Audrey, what do we have in store today?
Oh, well, today I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite topics. We're talking about everything real estate. And, so often people don't understand, all of the different asset classes. So I'm happy that today we're going to lay a foundation, but also even incorporate, where does real estate and insurance intersect as a tool, to create that financial foundation. So I'm excited about today's topic.
Right. I mean, everybody wanted to invest into real estate and grow their portfolio, right? And use the depreciation and all of that good stuff related with real estate. So, carry on.
Well, today, as I mentioned, we're going to touch on the various asset classes because, again, a lot of times people only think of real estate from the standpoint of purchasing a home. And I sort of follow more of the Robert Kiyosaki approach when we talk about, especially residential real estate that is a single family home that maybe you and your family are going to live in. But of course, with Airbnb and other things, you have the opportunity to rent rooms, share your space, and all of that. But in the beginning, if you were just buying a traditional home and you didn't want anyone in your home, then your real estate is really more of a liability than an asset, right? It is one of the tools, though, that allows you some deductions. We talk about interest rate deductions from the mortgage. The government has created favorable ways to reduce your income by both being able to deduct the interest rate and also to depreciate the property over a period of time. But when we talk about the asset categories, the thing that I'd like to introduce is that in this residential bucket, what you see are properties like your single family homes, your townhomes, condos, if you're in a community where they utilize co-ops, and then multifamily properties and vacation homes. And so those last options are kind of moving more into like investable, if you will, residential real estate. Not only are you thinking about when you're looking at those asset classes, there's different requirements. So I, as a broker, when I advise clients, especially clients that are looking to purchase their first property, I usually push them to consider buying a 2 to 4 unit. So a duplex unit, because a duplex to fourplex, because between a single family and a 2 to 4, those are financed in the same manner, meaning they're considered one and the same. And to me, the strategy is by buying, a 2 to 4 unit, now you've hedged your bet as it relates to the risk that you're taking on, and there's always financial risk. Think about it. If you're
It
financing
is.
something over 30
That's
years,
right.
anything can happen, along that journey, right? And so you want to
Right.
have access to resources. And what a lot of times people forget is that when you buy a property, you have to continue to invest in that property to maintain it. Otherwise, it is not necessarily going to appreciate at as great a rate as it could, right? And I know you
Right.
know something about this, about investing in real estate, for business
Right.
purposes.
Back in the day when I starting out buying a house, my first house, I didn't consider about look into the advice that you just said earlier, buying a fourplex or duplex and just rent on one side, live on the other side, that you can generate income, additional income, and use depreciation over time to to reduce the tax
Yeah.
and also appreciation. I bought my first house as a single family home because we all wanted to have a single family home, something nice, something, oh, it's my first home, I want it to be perfect.
Mhm.
No, but for investment point of view, duplex or fourplex would be a better choice, right?
Absolutely, because what I tell my clients, I'm like, listen, buy that first because you're going to get to, so if there's like programs, say mortgage programs to help you buy, sometimes there are programs such as the FHA, for example, that will help you with your down payment. So when you're buying a single family to up to 4 units, if you get to buy that asset, say with as low as 3 to 5% down, and you get multiple units, that's the one time that you get to do that. Because if you buy a
Right.
single family house first and then you go to buy 2 to 4 units, immediately the mortgage lender is going to treat you as an investor. So now to buy that 2 to 4 units, you have to put somewhere between 40, and in some cases I saw a bank require a client to put 50%
That's a lot of
down
down payments. Yes.
versus 3%, and so if you just do basic math, if you only had to put 3 to 5% down versus 50% down, you've been able to leverage a greater asset. You're able to build your wealth faster with 3% down. And
Absolutely.
then more importantly, if you choose to buy a house after that, now you have those 4 units helping to contribute to paying not only the mortgage of the 4 units, but also in some cases kicking off revenue towards your single family home. So if you find yourself in a situation where there's an illness or you lose your job or something, you're not immediately in financial jeopardy. And that's what typically happens is there's a medical emergency or the person loses their job and then they come into jeopardy with that primary mortgage on that single family residence. And then if they didn't want to have people living in their house, again, before Airbnb, they didn't want to rent out a room, or I was never a person that wanted to have strangers in my house. And I didn't want roommates and all that stuff. When I was raising my son and I, it was like, this has to be our sacred environment.
Right.
So if you don't have space for an ADU, which again, now if you do, that's great, but that requires another investment. You have to invest in having that unit built and all of that stuff. And so you have to have the resources to do that. So that's not an option if you find yourself in financial jeopardy. So it's like, how do we prepare to keep ourselves out of those situations?
I think for the first time home buyer, if that is something that you want to invest into real estate and grow, consider that strategies, because instead of buying a single family home just for comfort or for just because you want to, there is better way to put your money into strategies that generate more money with additional rent incomes, right?
Absolutely. And deductions, because again, when you're
Deductions.
operating a business, then you have even additional expenses, your vehicles and all of the other things necessary. If you have a property manager, your guardian, all of these things become part of your overall business expenses and deductions. So it's a win-win-win, and, we were talking about before we went live, other ways that you can utilize insurance, which I recommend this as well. We're, protecting the mortgage, for example. So, maybe you want to speak to a few of the thoughts around even that, because I believe that's what my mother did, but I'll let you share that nugget.
Using insurance as part of a concept where you establish a policy, and it's basically a permanent policy, and access that policy cash value and borrow against that policy can give you additional advantage to fund your real estate deals. And people are doing that to generate more income, and the money that you have in your policy continues to earn interest uninterrupted. So there's a lot of tax advantage and strategies that you can utilize that method to fund your real estate.
Absolutely. And then also, even what I suggest is when you have a 30-year mortgage, that you use an insurance policy that in the event you have a critical condition, or you sadly, if you pass, that your mortgage, this is what my mother did. She used a policy that if something happened to her, if she passed, the house would be paid off.
Exactly. That's part of mortgage protection insurance,
Yeah,
because for the life, when you buy a house, that's a 30 years of mortgage payment that you have to make. And anything can happen in between. If you pass away, you want to make sure that mortgage is paid off so that your family doesn't have to face foreclosure or loss of income, loss of protection. So mortgage protection insurance is very important, especially utilizing, a term of permanent insurance, life insurance that can help you to protect your family in that event.
Right. And then a lot of times people don't even consider commercial investment opportunities. So when you talk about commercial, you have, different asset class. You have multifamily, and that's 5 or more units. You have hospitality, you have industrial, you have all of these different, you have medical, you have all of these different type of commercial assets that are designated based on their use as well as their class. They're rated by their age and their entrance into the market. And so a lot of times, because you're thinking residential, you don't consider how would I invest in some of these asset classes. And sometimes you invest directly as a part of a syndicate that's looking to buy that property. Sometimes you invest through a REIT, a real estate investment trust. They have both privately held and publicly traded real estate investment trusts. So a lot of times, if you're looking on the market and you see so-and-so REIT, there's a hospital REIT, there's a hospitality REIT, you can invest in those properties, which you become a more passive investor, and you're able to realize the benefits of how those assets are structured, and realize and generate revenue along the way. So again, depending upon your knowledge and experience in that environment, it doesn't mean that it's off limits. It certainly means that you should have a team on your bench of qualified advisors that can help. I think what really people should consider, this happens for the wealthy. The wealthy typically put in place a family office. And what a family office does is manages their wealth. And so they have a bench of qualified professionals representing all of the different areas that they're going to consider for investment. And so this is their full-time job. So if somebody's specializing in what's happening on the stock, then that team is looking at market opportunities. If they have a passion for emerging ventures, for example, they may have so much money allocated towards investing in emerging ventures, again, in sectors that they may have a passion for or that they know and love, and then other things. So it's so that you have a diversified portfolio. Well, those of us who may not have wealth at that level just yet, you want to plan for it. So you want to begin to think like that type
Exactly.
of wealthy individual.
Right. The wealthy always, they have the leverage of using financial professional to help them to manage their wealth and grow their wealth and protect their wealth. As the individual like us, you still have that access to financial professionals, or put together teams that can help you, depending on what your goals and your objectives are. But there are potentials. There's a lot of investments that that we don't know. We don't know all of it out there. Only professionals they know, because they specialize into that specific area. So it's good to reach out, a person that have that knowledge, so that you can learn more and be more advisable. And in that situation, if you want to invest into real estate, buy insurance, or any other investment that you have in mind, reach out to someone that or contact us, email us. We can guide you through this whole process.
Absolutely. And, the last kind of bucket of consideration are land acquisition. And that's important, because I was actually speaking to someone last week, and they were talking about how their family, they had inherited a lot of land. And because most of the members, moved on to the city or whatever, and they had not paid attention to the land that they had back in the South, some of them lost their land that their grandparents worked so hard to get and accumulate. Other people were eyeing the land, waiting for those people to die out, hoping that the heirs wouldn't come back and look for their land. And people were like, well, we don't know what to do. And so, there's different types of land. There's land that is considered greenfield. It's untouched. It's been maybe used for agricultural purposes. So that's pure land that oftentimes, if there's growth in a city that becomes urbanized, then you look at opportunities to subdivide those land for additional residential or other potential uses. So when you're dealing with a qualified team, they're going to assess the highest and best use of that particular land. But here's the part that a lot of times people and family don't understand. You don't have to be the expert in development. Look, you have your family put that land in a family trust and you lease it at a 99-year lease term to qualified folks who can develop. And now, there are entire cities that are built on a land lease. I was using the reference of, I lived in Marina del Rey in Southern California for a while. And there are parts of Marina that it's all, you can buy a condo, which is subdivided airspace. But in addition to paying for that airspace, you have to pay for the land that the space that it's occupied on as part of you have your mortgage, you have your CAM charges, you have all of these others, but you're also paying for the land lease because it's built on a 99-year. So think about it. If
in that situation, I mean, if you buy a house in an area where is the land lease, then you have to pay it. The houses belong to you, but when you sell that house, then what happens to that lease? Is that lease passing on to the next person?
It does, because it's a 99-year lease. So every person that acquires that property is acquiring that physical structure and has to pay on the land lease because they don't own the land. It's not part of the transaction. But think about how many generations you've set your family up for. If 99 years, you 3 or 4 different generations of an income stream. And you continue to renew that. And then your family. So that's a basic way to ensure that you're passing on generational wealth. And it doesn't require you to be the expert in how to develop those assets. And that's the thing that, so for years I was telling people, I said, oh my gosh, listen, you're talking to your family, or if you have older members of your family and you guys have land, listen, just talk to me. I'm giving you the free advice. Just let me help you, because it's such a tragedy. I know that, your grandparents, your great-greats that work so hard to accumulate that land, they're rolling over in their grave when they see you make a very short-term, very limited decision and you lose or you sell for, that asset. Because again, if it's raw land, it's undeveloped, any smart developer is going to negotiate their acquisition based on its current form. So that's like the lowest end if it's lacking development, and because they have to invest all the infrastructure, again, depending upon where that asset is. So you want to be able to participate further upstream. And the only way you can do that is to have some type of valued improvements. And those improvements could be something as simple as placing a subdivision map on the property, if it is that the property is primed for subdivision. But if you don't have the resources to do that, don't do that. Get the land in a family tree. Do that.
Leverage the professional. Have they come in to help you develop that land.
Yeah, do that.
For generational wealth, right? I mean, 99 years lease, and that land is still yours, and you continue to make money every year. So that's tremendous.
Yes. So, it's one of those things, as you see, my blood starts to boil here. I get so passionate about this because, that's what my mother, so the reason that I even segued into real estate is my mom, when she was about 19, she started in commercial real estate. She was doing land deals, and it required that she travel. So she transitioned out of commercial into residential. But so I grew up kind of learning what she would say, baby, it's location, location, location. So I knew location, location, location before I knew anything else, right? And I've been able to run several real estate plays, over the course of my career. I had to become an expert in real estate because she died young, unexpectedly. I hadn't really mastered all of the ins and outs of real estate because I had her. But when she died and I found myself in a situation where I was not as, knowledgeable, and I learned the losses that you can take, because if you have the wrong people on your team, that's the other thing, you can lose your real estate. And oftentimes the wrong people are gunning for your real estate. So you find you often come across more wrong people than you do right people when you're inexperienced. And if you don't know what questions to ask, and if you don't know how to evaluate, and if you assume, I've had people come to me and go, oh, well, this person is a residential agent, and they're trying to advise me on a commercial transaction. Well, you're going to lose your shirt. because 9 times out of 10, they're not qualified to advise you, because in order to do commercial, you need to have some additional training and guidance and experience. So, it's kind of like, are you going to go to a dentist to deal with your chronic back pain? No, you're not. You're going to go to a
Right.
hopefully you're not. Hopefully you're not, but
You want to go to a professional that specialize in that specific area because they have the experience and the expertise to guide you through the process. So speaking of real estate, commercial real estate, especially when you have an asset, a large asset of 10 millions or more in land or real estate, there are strategies. I'm just going to touch this on very quickly, which is something that we'll talk down the road in the next future episodes. But there are life strategies that you need to utilize to add on more. Let's say 10 millions you have an asset. You can add another $10 million or more into your wealth through bank finance. There are ways to there are creative strategies to do that. So consult with your financial professionals or reach out to us if you want to find out how to do that.
Right. And, the other thing we didn't really talk about as much is using a self-directed IRA as a tool. So we were talking last week, I think we were talking about IRAs and Roths and some of the things, and making sure that you go back if you've left an organization and you have funds that you need to transfer. I caught up with an old friend while I was in the Bay Area. And he was so proud. He says, I said, well, what are you doing these days? He says, hey, I'm a day trader. And he says, and also I manage my assets. So I have a self-directed IRA. So I manage all of my other portfolio. And I said, wow. And he had a big smile on his face. I said, so it must be working out. He said, listen, my wife told me that we have this big old house up in the hills and we want to maintain it. So we better have some strategies. And so he said, I just got to work. And I, dug in and I made myself an expert, in these areas, to the degree that this is how I maintain our wealth. And, it's, again, each person has to find what you're passionate about or what you're willing to dig into. Because, again, as with anything, you're not going to master everything. Investors tend to lean towards something that they love, that they're passionate about, and they really develop deep domain knowledge in that space. That's what, when I took the risk in, transitioning into real estate, I thought I'd be good at it. I learned that I loved it. And so I said, I'm going to go deep. I'm going to go deep, deep, deep in my domain knowledge in this space. And that's, all the way through real estate development. When somebody calls me and talks about, I just, start turning flips. I get so excited about the real estate. So it's a passion. Well, you can't outwork me in something that you're passionate about, because you're constantly paying attention to the opportunities, but also at the same time, sometimes having your money in real estate, you have to realize that it becomes illiquid. So you don't want to have all of your money in real estate. So there's a balance. How much leverage do you use versus just money in real estate? Because there's a problem there. I've been in that situation where I had tremendous equity in my real estate, but I couldn't access that equity, because if I was trying to go to the bank, which we're going to talk next week about, as Andrea said, bank financing and kind of the pros and cons of when you're using bank financing, and then the conditions upon which you're able to access your equity in your property. So it's, and then also the risk. You don't want to have your property sitting there and looking like it's paid off in full, because you begin to lose some of the tax favored advantages that you have. If you're not paying a mortgage, then you don't have the interest rate deduction, so you begin to reduce some, but also you're at risk, because there are trolls, unfortunately, that look and go and try to identify properties that are free and clear and run scams and steal your equity. You don't even realize your equity is stolen, right? And so, so you just want to understand that, again, in each investment strategy, there are pros and there are cons, and there are always risks that you need to be aware of to mitigate.
What I see is a lot of people are trying to, in their 50s, and trying to hurry up and pay off their mortgage because they don't want to pay during the retirement years or having to worry about it. But there are considerations that you want to think about. Tax deduction. like you said, there's no more tax deduction at or during the retirement years. And if your mortgage is paying off completely and you pour all your money into that mortgage and not paying down your credit card debts,
Mhm.
or using that money instead to have a well diverse portfolio, you should have also life insurance,
Mhm.
um, liquid stock,
Mhm.
bonds, things like that that you like to do, but minimize the risk and your time horizon. So before paying off your mortgage, there are many ways that you can utilize that same amount of money to uh, get additional plans, or plans out there to basically maximize your potential and maximize your protection for your lifetime income.
Absolutely. You bring up a very important point because instead of paying off that mortgage, if I was concerned that something might happen, then that's how I protect my income. If it is that I'm an entrepreneur, then I'm going to have a disability premium to protect my income in the event that I have some type of crisis. But also, I'm going to pay into an annuity that could potentially pay that mortgage if, for example, something happens with my income, because it's better to have that mortgage for a longer period of time to use the tax favor advantage that you're going to have. And that's the other thing, that when you have assets that you've invested in pre-tax, you're going to be taxed at a later date. The tax didn't go away, it's going to show up. And at that time, if you don't have sufficient deductions, because think about it, later, most people, you don't have dependables anymore. Your kids are out of the house. So you don't have them as a deduction. So when you look at what you would have to reduce your liability, that bucket is a little bit limited. So you have to, kind of plan for each of your different scenarios along your life cycle, is what I'd like to say. Absolutely.
Right. The mortgage protection insurance is important, and part of life insurance policy, permanent policy, can provide that additional protection for yourself and your family in case you pass away or are getting very, very sick and you no longer can work. You can access the money from the policy to pay for your house, your medical expenses, and events, unexpected events coming up that you didn't plan for. Life, it happens, right? Anything can happen. And
Absolutely.
I also wanted to clarify one more thing is the private mortgage insurance. A lot of people don't know what's the mortgage protection insurance and private mortgage insurance. They're two different things here, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. PMI is what the lender requires you to pay, especially if it is you use one of the lower interest rate or lower investment, meaning earlier, if you come in on one of the programs like FHA where you have 3 to 5% down. If you are investing a lower amount in order to mitigate the risk, because again, lenders know what happens over the course of a life cycle. They know that typically people, so they require that you pay into an insurance premium that's going to protect them, but it doesn't protect you. And so that's why we're talking about strategies that will help protect you, because you're already protecting the lender, right? They built
Right.
it in.
The private mortgage insurance, people have that insurance, they think it's protect themselves, but it's not. It's protect the lender, not
Yeah,
you. So
not you.
you are exposed and to all these risks. So what you want to do is to get mortgage protection insurance or a life policy that has that component to help you in events that you didn't plan for. They're getting very, very sick, or unexpectedly untimely death. You don't want to leave your family in financial stress, or a situation where you had to face foreclosure, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I see that sadly all the time because one of the areas that I had developed an expertise is in probate real estate. And so, some of the properties that end up in probate is sad, because again, families either didn't deal with or didn't necessarily have an heir, or they thought that they had put together their estate planning in such a way that they were protected. And unfortunately, it's not. So then it ends up in probate. And, if your asset has to go through probate, one, it goes to probate to confirm the reading of the will if everything is in place. But if those things are not in place, And the legal system has to determine the outcome of those assets. Well, who's going to get a big chunk, or whichever jurisdiction the property is placed in, all of those fees that you're paying to the court, and the attorneys. The attorneys make, a killing on this particular opportunity. And I know it doesn't, I'm not attorney bashing. Yes, I have a JD. I'm not a practicing attorney, but I understand, the advantages is just kind of, where those experts need to come to play as well. But it takes away what you could be passing on as it relates to generational wealth, if that's your interest and desire. So you're thinking about
Right.
those things, you want to think about them in advance.
The probate process is the ugly process. No one's want to go through this process. So, trying to, put together, you have a house, consider getting a trust or something that put in place that protect you and your family. We are running out of time. Oh my gosh, 30 minutes just has gone by so quickly. I just want to, next week, we have a special guest. So please join us next week at Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. We will talk about bank finance for your retirement. So
That's going to be exciting.
Right. Well, thank you for tuning in and be with us today. And as usual, we're here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Please join us weekly. Until then, we encourage you to take care of yourself and your loved ones, and creating a plan to protect your family and yourself. And if you already have one, consider review and update it. If you don't have one, reach out to us or reach out to a financial professional to help you.
Absolutely. We're free to take a look. And Andrea, I'll see you next week. And everyone, again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week for wealthdoctors.us. You can send us an email at info@wealthdoctors.us, and we'll take a look. Until next week, take care.
Thank you.